Evening guys, hope you're doing well. So as I mentioned in my previous video, I did manage to pick up some cigars, some pipe tobacco, and I'm highlighting a few other things I managed to pick up from my trip to Italy. I think I'll start off with pipe tobacco, as being primarily a pipe channel. Pipe tobacco in Italy is priced quite strangely. Pouch tobacco is for the most part relatively affordable. You have some very kind of budget friendly pipe tobaccos that might be starting out about €5 or €6 a pouch, going up to maybe 13, 14 euros a pouch. And that's either 40 or 50 grams, I quite often found. But when it came to tins of tobacco, for example, Capstan, Robert McConnell, Pete Heinrichs, I would like to also say I saw quite a bit of Rattrays, things such as that. You were looking at €25, €28, some of them €32 a tin. So pretty much on par, if not more expensive than it is here in the UK. Now, I was familiar with that ahead of time. I knew pipe tobacco was quite expensive in Italy, but I didn't expect some tins to be that expensive. However, I did manage to pick up one pouch of HH Vintage Latakia and a pouch of Italian pipe tobacco, this being 40 grams of Italia, which is a blend of Virginia and Kentucky. This is kind of a 100% Italian tobacco blend that I was told is, out of the Italian blend, that's probably the best one. Italian tobacco is not known for being superb. That one probably is okay, of course, compared to a lot of stuff I smoke, but I thought, being in Italy, I'll pick up something such as that. Coffee. I know a lot of you are into coffee, as am I. The Italian coffee trend is very different to here. In the UK, in particular Scotland, and then exact location Edinburgh. Edinburgh is really big on something that's called third wave coffee. That's kind of nice artisan coffee shops that quite often will use fresh roasted beans. They might roast their own, or they will use a third party roaster. Use really high quality beans, and they will make high quality coffee. And third wave, you'll expect to see certain coffees, certain accessories, certain food there potentially. Whereas in Italy, they have a very traditional coffee scene. Your classic espresso bars. Very few Starbucks, for example. Starbucks never really achieved anything in Italy because of their coffee culture. There is a Starbucks Reserve in Milan, which I visited and I have been to before, actually, when it first opened back in, I think, 2017. And that's that's the exception. But for the most part, you don't see things like those fast coffee places such as Starbucks. You see more local historic coffee shops. This is one of them. I know Mike at Briar Blues is a massive fan of their coffee in particular. This one, I can never pronounce it. I believe it's pronounced Saint Eustachie or Eustachia. Probably butchering that completely. But their beans are roasted in a really interesting way that gives it a very unique flavour and something that's very different. Comes in a can, which is quite nice because it means it's sealed. Coffee's good. Like I said, I drink a lot of coffee and I'm very passionate about coffee. I like freshly roasted beans. This is a good in between because it's in the can. It's freshly roasted and then vacuum sealed. So it keeps its freshness a lot longer compared to if you buy a bag of beans that was roasted, say, 3 months prior. That will have lost a lot of its flavour. But yeah, fantastic coffee shop, great coffee, and I brought myself some beans to show for that. Now, again in Milan, some people will recognise this brand. I won't pronounce it because I will pronounce it wrong. But this is a very famous pipe shop and leather goods shops based in Milan. They sell a selection of pipes, leather goods, all both non-smoking and smoking accessories. And I thought, seeing I was there, I needed to pick something up to highlight the occasion. So I picked this. This is a leather pipe cleaner holder. As you can see, it came with pipe cleaners. And this is just the most amazing pipe cleaner holder. For a start, the aroma is fantastic. Of course, handmade, genuine Italian leather, fantastic craftsmanship. The feel is just superb. I love the way leather feels, real leather feels. It's very unique, and I know, of course, in today's world, fake leather's kind of faux leather is very popular, and it's much better quality than it used to be. But of course, it doesn't replicate that same feel that natural leather does. And like I said, the craftsmanship in this is fantastic. So I look forward to taking this on future ventures and journeys out. A great way to properly store your pipe cleaners. And it just happens to smell fantastic. I did hope to buy a pipe. Didn't actually find any I liked. Of course, there was quite a few Castellos that were to catch my eye, but of course they don't make filtered pipes. And the filtered pipes that I did come across, I just didn't really gel with them. I was hoping to buy a Radice, but I went to Novelli Pipes in Rome, I went to Fincanto and a few other pipe shops, and for some reason the pipe shops I went to, Novelli being one of them, which is a fantastic pipe shop, they had sold out of all their Radices, which is unfortunate because Radice is one of the brands I love. I've got one just now, I've had 2 previous ones, but they're a brand that does a lot of 9mm, so I know they're a brand I can quite often reach to for. But yeah, that's slightly unfortunate, but I think in the coming months I will make up for that by buying one online that I know is filtered and that I can get my hands on. Because I've got 2 in particular I'm potentially going to buy. One's a Sandblast, one's a Smooth. So we'll have to keep my eye out for that. And then finally, onto the cigars. Now, for those of you that were aware, I was hoping to buy quite a selection of cigars. Prices in Europe are extremely well priced compared to here. The price hikes that we all experienced last year it came into effect mid-May, early June last year. The global market was affected concerning brands such as Cohiba and Trinidad. In the UK, of course, everything's gone through the roof in cost. Doesn't matter what brand or what size of Vitola, anything, it's gone through the roof. Whereas in Europe, although the prices across the board have gone up in brands not including Trinidad and Cohiba, they've only gone up about 10% on what they were previously. So cigars in Europe are still very affordable. That being said, the stock was pretty much non-existent. I mentioned in my other video that the La Casa de Habano in Rome, called Fincanto, didn't have a single Cuban cigar, which was pretty amazing. Especially being a La Casa de Habano, not just a kind of a standard pipe shop or cigar shop. The fact that it was a La Casa de Habano, which for those of you that follow Cuban cigars, you'll know that that means a great deal. And for them to not have a single Cuban cigar is a big deal. I'm also kicking myself slightly, as when I was in Milan, I went to the La Casa. They did have a good few Cuban cigars. Not a very small selection of singles, maybe 7 or 8 to choose from, but they did have a few boxes. One box in particular was Pola Naga Monte Carlos. That's one of my favourite cigars, and for some reason, I do not know why, I didn't buy them. I thought, this being the La Casa in Milan, it's a much smaller shop. It means that surely when I further on in my trip, by the time I get to Rome, I'm sure they will have some and I can have a better choice to see what I want to buy. Because obviously I had a budget in mind. And of course, as the trip progressed, I realised that I made a big mistake in not buying as much as I physically could in Milan, as boxes became essentially non-existent. So, lesson for the future: if you're on holiday and you're in a cigar shop and you see something you like, just buy it. Don't hope for more down the line. Just grab it while you can. I'm kind of annoyed with myself because that's what I do in life, but for some reason I thought I'd postpone it and wait, hold off, and clearly the wrong move. Anyway, I did manage to pick up a selection of singles, for the most part the same cigar, but just in multiples. And we'll start off with a favourite of mine, which actually I'm happy to find, is the Juan Lopez number 2. This is a Robusto sized cigar. Great cigar. Medium to full in flavour. I find it quite chocolatey and peppery. And with a few years of age, smoke fantastic. This one, really nice wrapper, not toothy, and I can feel that the construction is fantastic, which is good. I picked up 5 of those in total. As you can see, there's another, sorry, I picked up 4 of those in total, but I was only able to keep 3 because I did smoke one while I was there, because I had brought like 5 or 6 cigars, but as I was so unfortunate not to be able to buy what I was hoping for, I did dip into my purchases. However, 2 of the Juan Lopez number 2s that I managed to pick up were these beauties, which, if you can pick up on camera, are extremely dark and oily. If I compare it to this one, for example, you can see the difference of the wrappers. This is almost Maduro in wrapper compared to this one. Same cigar, just shows you the colour difference that you will find from box to box. This, for example, I picked up in Milan, this I picked up in Florence. And that kind of really highlights that, although it's the same cigar, the shades of wrappers can vary. And the way the Cuba packages their boxes is they will do it based on colour. So all the cigars in the box will look the same. These 2 cigars will taste the same, although I always find darker and oilier wrappers such as this always do taste that little bit sweeter and better. But at the end of the day, it's the same cigar. It's just tobacco is natural and it has different shades. So they always colour match boxes. So yeah, really glad I picked up these 2. If I'm being honest, he had about half a box. I probably should have bought the remainder of the box, because it's not often you find cigars this rich and oily. So that was a good find. Next up, we've got 2 Por Laranaga Picadores. The Picadores came out not too long ago, actually. I think, if I recall, it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It's quite a rare cigar in terms of it's a regular production, but it's more of a Habanos exclusive. Well, that's what it's essentially deemed to be, although it's got no secondary band to indicate that. And for some reason, these were quite popular across Italy. There was a few cigar shops that I found them in, although I only picked up 2, because they're a good cigar, but the blend is slightly different to the regular Por Laranaga, and which of course I love, but this blend is slightly different. It's still a good cigar, but not one of my favourites. But again, I got essentially what I could. We then have 2 Cuevas, which are Figurados. Cueva, I believe they've got 3 or 4 cigars in their portfolio, all of them double Figurados. These ones, I can't remember the name. I occasionally smoke Cuevas, but they're not my go-to cigars. And I forget the smaller sizes. Of course, they have the Salamones and the Discontidos, which are bigger cigars. Whereas these ones, I can't remember the name. But great little cigars. As you can see, very unique in style and shape. But for that reason, they are no lesser a cigar. And actually, to roll these, you have to be very... Well, I say to roll these, you have to hope that they're rolled well. But to roll a shape like this is much harder than other shapes. One, because of the size of the cigar, but two, the double Figurado. To follow on from Cuevas, we have another 2 Cueva cigars. As you can see, these are about twice the size of these ones. Again, I would like to say that these are the starts with T, I can't remember the name. Again, my Spanish is pretty poor. But these are fantastic cigars. I used to have a box of these maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Smoked through them within about a year because they're fantastic cigars. A brand that, again, is very overlooked, but if you can find them, I can highly recommend them. Following from that, I managed to pick up 2 of the new Rafael Gonzalez. These are, I believe these only came out in May 23. A new Vitola for the line. I believe these are Hermoso number 4s, which means they're a 48 ring gauge. I can't remember the name of them. I think it's Coronas Deluxe, maybe. Like I said, it's a very new cigar. I haven't tried them before. Thought that was quite interesting to find something new and to give it a go. And to finish it off, I managed to pick up some Monte Cristos. Start with, I managed to pick up a singular Monte Cristo Petite number 2. A cigar that in the UK is extremely overpriced. I believe these are now approaching £40, which for a Petite number 2 is crazy. These used to be low 20s, which were a good value at the time, whereas now that's crazy money. But again, in Europe, I think this was 13 or 14 euros, for example, to give you a bit of price indication. And to give you a price indication on, for example, the Juan Lopez number 2s, I believe in the UK these are around £35 a cigar. In Italy, these were £13.50, which in pounds is probably about £12, so literally a third of the cost. And to finish it off, as I can see it probably been dragging on a bit too long, I managed to find, and it's definitely the score of the trip, was 2 beautiful Monte Cristo number 2s, where I must say, where the head of the cigar is perfectly rolled, with that beautiful point that you find on a true Torpedo Pyramides. To me, the Cuban Pyramides is up there with probably arguably the best Cubans. You have the P2, you have the Monte 2, H. Upmann number 2, for example. All of them were exceptional cigars. There's something about a Pyramides that just offers you a sublime smoke. It's a great sized cigar. And to me, the Monte 2 is arguably one of the most iconic Cuban cigars. So yeah, again, beautiful wrappers. Slight crack in this one, but that was my fault bringing them back. I was as careful as I could, but of course, you can only be so careful. But these, again, they smell extremely rich and chocolatey, which are fantastic, and that's the note that you want to smell when you have a Monte Cristo, in particular a number 2. But to give you some indication on the price points, those a Monte 2 in Italy came in at €21, which I would say is about maybe £19, £19.50. In the UK now, a Monte Cristo number 2 is £50. So again, more than twice the cost. Which is why I've said it before, and I'll say it again essentially, that I hope the camera angle is back to where it was. The video stopped, I've been talking for too long. But if I recall what I was saying, kind of the price of these Monte 2s, it's night and day, which is essentially why I've just stopped buying cigars in this country, because I can't afford them. I mean, but it's also not just the point of I can't afford them, because they've become essentially quadrupled, some, but a lot of them have tripled in price for something that was already quite expensive here, is that it's just not good value. Essentially, if you could get a cheap flight to, let's say, Amsterdam in the Netherlands, from here, I could get a flight from Edinburgh to Amsterdam, and it takes about an hour. So I could be in the La Casa de Habano in Amsterdam. If I left tomorrow morning at 9, I could be there by lunch. I could go, assuming they had the stock, of course. I could fill my pockets essentially with cigars. One person is allowed to bring back 50 tax-free into the UK, and anything over 50 you then have to pay the duty on. That's the benefit of buying from abroad, is it isn't like you're trying to dodge anything. You're allowed to do that. Same with pipe tobacco, you're allowed to bring back 250 grams of pipe tobacco, or I believe it's 200 cigarettes before you have to, and anything more than that you have to pay the duty for. So essentially, I could probably get a cheap flight to Amsterdam for the day, fly in the morning, go to the La Casa de Habano, buy 50 cigars, let's say 3 boxes of 10 and 20 singles, come back, be home in time for dinner, and I will have probably saved myself, let's say you bought those 50 cigars for £600. There's no reason why in the UK that same 50 cigars isn't £2,000. And assuming you got a flight for, let's say, under £100, which you can, it really makes you think, why not just do that? Which is what I'll probably do going forward. It's kind of essentially for the same cost as it would cost me to go to the La Casa de Habano in Edinburgh, for example. I could, by the time I say get the train, walk there, sit down, have a cigar, maybe have a coffee, maybe have a glass of wine or a cocktail with the cigar, have a whiskey, and get the train back. The cost of that cigar, that drink, that coffee would probably be the same as a flight to Amsterdam and back. And when you actually think about it and put it in words and say it out loud, you realise how much of a good prospect that is. And that's probably what I'll do. I kind of every year I might kind of get a cheap flight to somewhere I know will have stock. For example, Brussels, Amsterdam, Paris are within about an hour and a quarter and less flight from me. Fly in the morning, go to the cigar shop, buy your cigars, fly back that day, home in time for dinner, and you've saved yourself potentially thousands of pounds. So yeah, that's kind of my overhaul. It's probably been quite a long video, which has been definitely been dragged out for how much is in front of you. I apologise for that. But I thought it was about time to kind of do a proper sit down video, as I haven't done one since my trip last year, I believe, and kind of highlight some of the products I managed to pick up. Although, of course, I'm disappointed that the stock was so poor in Italy that I wasn't able to get everything I wanted in terms of cigars. I also realised I'm fortunate that I was able to find these, as if you were to only go to, say, Rome for your holiday and then return, I would have pretty much came back, I think, with the 2 Monte 2s and a single Juan Lopez, and that's probably it. I think the rest I found elsewhere on my travels. So that kind of, again, puts it into perspective that if it wasn't for me travelling to a few different places in Italy, I wouldn't have put together this lot of cigars. But yeah, that being said, hope you enjoyed that video. Hope I've not talked on for too long. Take care. Cheers.